All right, so we left last week. I'm on, right? Good, okay. All right, so we left last week with sort of in the middle of our study of the Shema. Moses, as we remember, was wrapping up his time of ministry with Israel, and he was going to step down. And so the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, and as well as many of the other chapters, contains some of Moses' last sermons and messages to the people. Deuteronomy 6, what is called the Shema, and it means to listen or to hear. And these powerful verses are still taught regularly by Jews everywhere. They are the foundational pieces of Scripture that to many actually rival the 10 Commandments in importance. And if we want to think about it, even in the account of Jesus, what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, when they asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? What did he say? You will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. What did Jesus just say? This is that important. The Shema is that important. They are. And so what can First Baptist Church glean from the Shema? What can we learn from these specific passages? And we began with the corporate responsibility of Israel. We talked about the corporate responsibility of the church body to respond and to pretty much join together in unison or in unity around a central idea. And the central idea of the church, of the universal church, and what should be our church, is that Jesus Christ is Lord, and he, out of his love, came to earth, died, and rescued us from our sins. That should be the central theme of any Bible-believing church, period. If not, I do not think they're Bible-believing. And they're probably a false church. Just saying that, okay? That is the central theme. That is the church. So, we began with the corporate responsibility. We saw in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, Hear, O Israel. Moses talked to the entire nation. What he was describing was for the entire nation. And then he gives them this phrase, the Lord our God. The Lord is one. And that was the theological foundation. Also, we talked about theological creed that would guide the rest of what Moses was going to say. This central truth that there is only one God should drive anything and everything the nation of Israel does. And it does drive what our church does. And so we talked about the theological foundation. Now, last week when I was re-listening to the sermon, I wanted to make sure I re-emphasized and re-clarified some things that I was not as clear as I would like to have been. And so I mentioned at one point that our church has some unspoken creeds. And these are unspoken creeds that we at First Baptist Church struggle with, as well as many other churches. And I was saying that specifically to drive home this point. See, everything our church does and everything you do as an individual is based upon your theological belief at that moment. See, how we respond to crisis is a reflection of what we believe about God. How we respond to problems is a reflection of what we believe about God. How we respond to people who are different than us is a reflection of what do we think and how do we view God. In counseling and in preaching, it all goes back to our theological foundation. And so I didn't really clarify that part as much. I wish I had, but now I am. So we talked about that Jesus Christ, this is a theological creed that we struggle with, okay? So Jesus Christ saves us through our faith, but in order to grow, we must obey the law. And whether we said it or not, a lot of times in our conversations or what we communicate to kids is law-based theology, and we don't even think about it. And so, for example, one of the examples that I used is you should not run in church. And we had said, see, some people say you should not run in the Lord's house. We've added law there. Now, should kids run around in church? I would say no, because they're going to trip. They're going to get underneath a walker, and those two ladies over there will run them right over, okay? So what I'm saying is it's common sense. It's not a theological foundation. It's actually just for safety. You guys are not. I mean, get out of the way, okay? All right, and another unspoken truth. So that is one response, okay? Another one is Jesus Christ rescues sinners, but now my freedom is an excuse to do what I want. Anybody who believes that they are saved and then continues to live and do what they want, contrary to what the Word of God says, is living this truth out. Yes, I'm going to heaven, but it doesn't really matter what I do now. I'm going to do whatever I want. There's a theological truth of how that plays out in people's lives. Another one is the sacrifice of Jesus brings salvation. The outward manifestation should be instantaneously obvious to mature Christians. And this is something that even I have to be careful of, because we look at somebody and we're like, man, they are acting like they're not even saved. And what am I doing? Well, I expect that person who's been saved a whopping 2 weeks to know the Bible. They should totally know John 3:16. They should probably be familiar. Man, they don't even know where the books of the Bible are. Are they even saved? And so right there in that moment, what I'm doing is, I am a reflection of a mature believer. And this person does not know the Bible like me. And so I will judge or respond. That is a reflection of my theological belief at that time. Not all the time, at that time. When we decide to lash out in anger at somebody, we are no longer resting in the mindset that God is going to take care of everything. Vengeance is his, et cetera, et cetera. So everything has to do with a theological foundation. And it's important to remember, because our theology drives our action. And in your life, what you believe about God drives what you do throughout the week. Okay, so these are beliefs, Okay, so we talked about 1 Timothy 1:15 through 17, a guiding theological foundation that I want to challenge all of us to remember and to memorize. This one is, the saying is trustworthy, deserving of full acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of who I am the foremost. But I received mercy for this reason, that in me, as the foremost, Jesus Christ might display his perfect patience as an example to those who might, or who were to believe in him for eternal life. To the King of the ages, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. And we're going to continue looking at the Shema and bringing it into our church situation. So, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, we're actually going to keep going with verse 5. It says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. So now Moses goes from challenging the entire nation of Israel, laying out the theological foundation of how they were supposed to live. This is what that is going to reflect. If you believe that there is only one God, the response is your central mission. And that is, you will love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your might. You will love the Lord. You shall do this. See, with all of our emotions, with all of our spiritual being, with all of our physical strength, you are to give it to the Lord, for there is only one. Here's yours. Our loyalty does not have to be divided among certain gods. We don't have to divide our time. We do not have to divide our energy, our strength, our money, our resources. It ultimately all belongs to the Lord. All of it. That's actually incredibly freeing, because we don't have to worry about what one God says and what another God says, or what another one God says. Have you guys ever noticed, like, people who, and maybe you have struggled with this, like you have a worship of sports, or worship of, video games or books or whatever it could be? Everything is constantly demanding and trying to grab our time, isn't it? Even our sports, even our favorite sports teams, they like to take our Sunday mornings. Or maybe it's our Saturdays this time. Or maybe, but now you also really, really enjoy soccer. So now you've grabbed your Saturday morning and your Sunday. But now in order to catch all the games, now you got to get cable too. And that's taking some of your money. And that's taking this. See, everything is always clamoring for our time. And I'm not saying never watch football or anything like that. But there's a balance. See, my time and what I spend is ultimately belong to the Lord. And so as a good steward of how he has decided to bless me, how am I spending that? If my family's going in debt over my love of a game, I'm blowing it. I'm worshiping the God, little God, or a God versus the God. So that's how it goes, okay? So our central mission, you will love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul and with all of your might. Covers everything. You will love God with everything that is you. Everything. See, Jesus, as I said, a few thousand years later, said, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, what is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And a second is like it. You will love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Having one God means loving only him. The end of 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 17 says, to the King of the ages, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. We have one God. His name is Jesus Christ. We have one. And this is our theological foundation. What we're going to talk about next week is we're going to actually expand on 1 Timothy chapter 1. And what we're going to see is that Jesus is the only wise God, King of the ages. Jesus came to save sinners. I am the greatest sinner. Jesus has a purpose for my life, and I am to love and serve him. And that's what we're going to see next week. And then after next week, just as a side note, we're actually going to begin studying the book of 1 Peter. So that'll be fun. That's in here, coming in 2 weeks. Now, to further illustrate this idea of our mission and how pretty much our mission shows up in anything and everything we do. Businesses really, really like to have, mission statements and stuff like that. And usually their mission statement is really, 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 really long and really complicated and really confusing. And what they're revealing by that is we don't know what we're doing. We just want to add a bunch of big words in so it looks like we are, okay? But I am really impressed. So Starbucks is not the most godly organization. Let me put it, okay? But when it comes to establishing what they're doing and why they're doing it, they nail it. All right, so you know the Starbucks logo? Oh. Okay, so this is what their mission is. To inspire and nurture the human spirit. One person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. That's their mission. They actually give us why they think that. So, their values. With our partners, our coffee, and our customers at our core, we live these values, creating a culture of warmth and belonging where everyone is welcome. Have you ever been into one of their Starbucks? They got this I don't know how to describe it. You're just like, oh, I feel at peace. I want some coffee. Second one is acting with courage, challenging the status quo, and finding new ways to grow our company and each other. Being present, connecting with transparency, dignity, and respect. Last, delivering our very best in all we do, holding ourselves accountable for results. Now, I am impressed. So there's two places I'm incredibly impressed by the employees you run into. Chick-fil-A, nail it every time. You can be so mad at them, and they would just say, my pleasure. It's just awesome, okay? Chick-fil-A is great. Starbucks people, and the other coffee. Oh, there's another coffee place I'm thinking. No, not Dunkin'. I love Dunkin' Donuts. Dutch Brothers. Have you ever gone there? They're like, want some coffee? They're like, yeah, man, their coffee must be good because they're all on it, all right? And so, they reveal their, oh man, they're happy and they're usually so nice. And I noticed there are not a lot of guys that work at Starbucks. There's like 1 in 9. And yeah, I don't know what's up with that. But anyways, okay. And they say, we are performance driven through the lens of humanity. And I want to say this right there is where they reveal their flaw. Do you want to look at the world through the lens of humanity or through the lens of what God said? This is the second answer, okay, guys? Okay. And that reveals their entire, very pagan philosophy. Now, I will still drink their coffee, but it's good to remember that everything everybody does is based upon their theological foundation, even Starbucks. Let's keep going. Point 4, personal ownership. So he says, verse 6, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Have you guys ever heard of something called the bystander effect? The bystander effect? So it is a social psychological phenomenon that refers to cases in which individuals do not offer any means of help to a victim when others are present. The probability of help is inversely related to the number of bystanders. In other words, the greater the number of bystanders, the less likely it is that one of them will help. Several variables help to understand why the bystander effect occurs, okay? I need a volunteer. Nope, right there, buddy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Come here. Okay. All right, Elizabeth, you can come up here. Yep. Yes! Okay, I need you to die. Lay down. Okay, come here. Okay, so there's two of us. Man, maybe one of us should help him. Okay, so what's happened is I have just passed the blame on to her. Maybe someone else should help her. Now, if you start adding more people, this guy looks dead. Should I help him? People are like, nah, man, someone else will take care of it. We keep passing the blame on to somebody else. So the more people you have, I'm sorry, dude, he's dead. Man, nobody even cares. I think he's actually dead. So why aren't you guys calling anybody?
Did you check to see if he had?
Yeah, we won't even do that. That's how bad the bystander effect is. We will let him lie there, man. Someone else take care of him. Let's just keep walking. Quickly. That's what happens. It's called the bystander. Thank you. All right, good job. Give him a round of applause. You died amazingly. Thank you. Okay, it's called the bystander effect. Now, why does this matter? Because Moses has given the corporate responsibility, oh, Israel, I need you to do this. I need you to, here's your theological foundation. There is only one God, and you are to love him with everything you have. And the mentality of a person is someone else will do it. It doesn't matter. There's so many people. It doesn't really matter if I do it. What have I just done? I've handed off my faith to someone else. It even happens in churches. There's a need. The first thought is someone else will do it. Someone else will do it. And there's typically only about 15% of the church that does it. Because we keep handing it off to someone else. We diffuse, it's called the diffusion of responsibility. And we do it with our faith. So these are a couple lines that might reveal this mentality. Someone else can do it. I've done my time. Someone can do it better. What have I just done? There's a need, there's a responsibility. I'm handing it off to someone more capable. The health of an organization depends on the health of the individuals in it. So do you own your faith, or are you the result of the bystander effect? I stopped going to such and such a church because the pastor didn't feed me. I stopped going to church because this church was mean to me, AKA one or two people in that whole church, and they probably weren't mean to me, but I probably misunderstood what they said, and so because they didn't give me what I wanted. My faith is this. That's a bystander effect. Expecting the pastor, I'm sorry, I am not going to be able to hand feed everybody in the flock Sunday after Sunday. I can't. I'm not supposed to. So if you leave because I'm not feeding you, you should have come to church more often. Because that's just dumb. Not only that, I stopped going to a church because one church was mean to me. I mean, seriously. Have we ever worked a day in our life? Do we stop working because the boss is mean? Really? Go back in there and we work. You know why? Cha-ching, we get the paycheck. But we always pass that blame on to somebody else instead of owning it. You are the reason. It's your fault. Pastor didn't feed you enough. Maybe you should stop falling asleep. Pastor didn't feed you enough. Maybe you should join one of the community groups. Because in those groups, they can remind and show and demonstrate how the Bible applies to your life, and you'll grow that way. Okay. Stop handing your faith off to someone else. It is not their responsibility to make you grow. It is yours and yours only. Now, as a pastor, does that mean I'm not going to do it? No. But it is your responsibility. Someone's always going to run off some extreme. All right, so Joshua, who was Moses' successor, said this, "And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." What Joshua is saying is you guys can all make your choice to serve a bunch of other gods. I will choose to believe the creed that Moses challenged us with, that there is only one God, and I am to love and serve him. Me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua is showing his commitment to that central theological foundation. We have to own our faith. Lastly is this idea of clan commitment. So a clan is pretty much an extended family unit. Okay, so what are we seeing here? So he says, these words that I command you shall be on your heart, but own it. Instead of handing it off, and he says, you will teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise, you shall bind them as a sign on your forehead, and they will be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Communicate these now to the next generation. All right. Everything is building up to this last point. Now, I've heard throughout my life a lot of stabs at youth ministries or churches bashing their teens or their kids. They won't say it flat out. Sometimes they will. But you'll hear grumbling about the teens and how wild they are and how immature they are and how they make too much noise. And you'll hear that. Now, I'm not saying that's our church. I'm just saying I've been, over the course of my life, 3 churches. And there are people that do it. And then there's a lot of people that don't, okay? So it's not like I'm throwing everybody. But there's this mentality that churches won't let teens serve because they aren't able to help, or that churches have entire blocks of youth leave, generally demonstrate an attitude of disrespect. You'll hear statements that, and in quotes, children and teens just have to learn to like what we do in regards to music or approach to ministry. Can someone please show me a generation that has ever loved what their parents like? You can look at everything. I mean, 70s music is weird. Weird. Did I say that? It's weird. You guys are weird, some of your musical choices. And some of the music choices of those younger than me is just as weird. Because my one block is like the 90s music with an occasional 80s hit or something. That's just like the musical style. We all have one. And that's just one example. See, Moses does not say, communicate to your kids cultural expectations. He doesn't say, communicate to your kids socialisms. He says, communicate to your kids. The Lord our God, the Lord is one, and we are to love him with all of our heart and with all of our soul and with all of our might. That is what we are to communicate to our children. That is what we are to communicate to the next generation. Our 252 program is built on the idea of this next verse. So this is what's funny. It says, you will teach them diligently to your children, and this is how you're going to do it. He says, you will talk of them when you sit in your house. When you sit around, you're supposed to talk about the central creed. You're supposed to talk about Jesus Christ when you're just sitting around your house. And when you're walking around in the store, when you're walking to school, wherever it is, when you're walking, you're to talk of them. Well, the equivalent of walking now is driving, and your kid, just barking away. Talk to him about Jesus. Not only that, he says when you lie down just before you go to bed, man, Vera has some of the most deepest theological questions right before bedtime. So bad, because then she gets to stay up for a while longer. I'm noticing a trend. All right. And when you rise, when you're talking in the morning, it is supposed to be an everyday part of your life, not just on Sunday. It is not supposed to be just on the weekend you talk about Jesus Christ. It is to be every single day, morning, noon, and night. It needs to be such a part of your conversations that you talk and you remind, and you keep bringing your children back to the gospel and back to what Jesus Christ has done for you. It says, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand. They shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And this isn't to show the world that you're a Christian. The point of these things is to remind your family what your goal is in life, and it is to love and serve God. That's what it is. You got to keep bringing it back to them. Keep bringing it back. Now, what happens if you don't have children at home? You might get children in your home for 30 years. That doesn't mean one kid. I'm thinking multiple kids, average age gap. Pretty much you get kids at your home about 30 years. Unless you have like 100 kids and then you still have kids at your home now and you're like 92. Okay, but for the most part, you have about 30-ish years. Then after that, they're gone. So about half are, the average life expectancy is 80-ish. Okay, so for about, a little over a third of your life, you have children there. But what happens when you no longer have children? You're right. You're right. Are we passing this on to our children? Are we passing this on to our grandchildren? Are we helping other parents communicate this truth to their children? Are we building them up? Or are we judging them when they come in? Don't turn your nose up at that family of 3 little ones who shows up a tad late. As we all know, kids do really weird things right before you're about to leave. My goodness. Especially if you have boys. Thankfully, I have 3 girls, and for the most part, they get ready, but Petra's now gotten a little naughty. I'm so glad Nikki's able to bring them in one piece. We need to join together and commit to teaching and training and investing in parents and their children, no matter how old you are. Take responsibility and do it. And I'm going to put a challenge out to those who are older. older. Okay? We would love to have your help in our toddler and our nursery. All you have to do is sit there and smile and let kids play with toys on your lap. That's it. That is it. Petra will seriously bring you a toy all the time and just keep showing and showing and showing. So I want to throw that out there, that we need people to serve in our nursery, in our toddler program. We need the presence of older people. So do it and help us out. Start investing in the lives of our children and help our parents out. Now, next week, so we've so far covered our corporate responsibility, the theological foundation, the central mission, personal ownership, and the commitment of the clan commitment. Next week, we're going to dig into our theological statement that we've been talking about in 1 Timothy. And we're going to break down this a little further in light of what we're learning and actually take this and then use this idea of corporate responsibility, theological foundation, central mission, personal ownership, and clan commitment, and bring that passage to bear on our church. And so, hope to see you guys next week. Let's